Hello everyone, this is CyberVita, and today we will be doing an overview of the miyoominiplus and how I have it set up in 2024. The miyoominiplus was released at the beginning of 2023 as a follow-up to the original Mini, but now with a bigger screen, also considering the sourcing issues of the original one. I bought mine in August of 2023, so I have it for over a year already. It is my first and only, for now, retro handheld emulation device. I have tried emulation on and off since I was in high school, more than 15 years ago, emulating Game Boy and SNES games on PC. At the same time, I like to play Java games on my Sony Ericsson phones. And later, in my college university years, I tried emulating Game Boy games again, in my Android phones, now with RetroArch. But I never played an entire game because I did not like using those touchscreen inputs. Now with the miyoominiplus, I got the nostalgia of tinkering with emulation but being now able to actually play and finish retro games. So without further ado, let's get started. To begin, this is what I got when I bought the miyoominiplus through the official Miyoo store on AliExpress in 2023. The box includes the device. I got the black transparent model. It came with a brandless 64GB micro SD card, a USB A to C cable, a micro SD adapter that I never used since my laptop has a built-in SD reader, a screen protector kit, and at last a user manual. The specs of the device can be seen on the screen right now. Pause the video if needed. I'm not going to go deep into this since this should be well known right now. There is a newer model with real-time clock that you can verify it is by checking this part in the back. The newer model has a more rounded design like this. That is the only difference between them. In terms of storage, the device from Miyoo's official AliExpress store comes with an unbranded 64GB microSD card, preloaded with games up to PS1 with only 3GB free. But as always, it is best to build your own ROM library, and also these unbranded microSD cards tend to fail, so I changed it to a SanDisk Ultra of 128GB. I still keep the original around if needed. I did have an issue recently with the SanDisk card when I was recalibrating the battery by charging the Miyoo from 0 to 100%, where at the end I tried to turn it on and it launched the original OS instead of OnionOS that I have installed. And when I checked the microSD card on my PC, it seems that it got corrupted since Windows was asking me to format it. So I tried to recover the information using Rescue Pro Deluxe with a license that came with the SD cards. I also tried Disk Genius and Disk Crew. Both of these last two worked better because they recovered almost 100% of the information. But I ended up using the files recovered from Disk Trio since it allowed me to select up to 500 megabytes to restore for free, instead of Disk Genius that only selected files could be restored without buying a license. I did have a backup of the SD card from almost a month ago, so I only ended up restoring the save files. After restoring everything, I did check the SanDisk card with H2TestW in case it was a fake card, even though I bought it in the official SanDisk store within Amazon. But everything seems to be in place. The write speed was low at 26 megabytes per second and read at 80, but it could also be because of the card reader built into my PC. And as of the time of recording this video, it has been already 15 days since I recovered everything and have not had any issues so far with the microSD card again. Though to avoid losing data again, I started using Syncthing to more easily backup save files. Moving forward to inputs, I really like the buttons of the Miyoo, so much that when playing other devices I tend to compare them with the Miyoo. The D-pad I find it to be really accurate and the face buttons easy to press on with good feedback. I do not use much the shoulder buttons other than the occasional use in some games and for the hotkeys of game states and fast forward. They are a bit clicky, but not too much. L2 and R2 are a bit raised to distinguish them as well. For the rest of the buttons, start, select, menu, volume and power, I have not found any issues pressing them. Even though the overall buttons are pretty quiet, these are not entirely silent to play at night next to someone sleeping, at least not games that require multiple quick inputs. Maybe an RPG can be played without disturbing others at night. Regarding build quality, for the price of the device, it is well built in overall, with my only nitpick being the adhesive of the screen that seems to be weak. Especially when the device is hot, I can hear sometimes that the glue has softened. The screen gets a bit loose, so it starts moving and the plastics starts to creak, as you can hear now. I have also seen a few reports of the screen falling out by itself, but nothing major, and it can be fixed easily by sticking it again, though it has not happened to me. In terms of durability, the only fragile part so far is the screen by the minimal bezel of it. I actually dropped the device once accidentally without any case from a height of around 1 meter, and some pixels of the screen died, as you can see here. At the beginning, I only noticed it on this corner, but on this other end, it seems to also have some dead pixels. If I start to see more, I'll keep you posted. I did not get any scratches nor nicks in the show because of the drop, since it fell mostly on the screen. Nonetheless, the damage can only be seen in mostly white or bright colors, and in the heat of the game you barely notice it. And since I have started using filters and overlays, it is not so noticeable. I also noticed that the plastic shell corners around the D-pad tend to wear off, as you can see around here. This is after 1 year of use, around 150 hours of actual gameplay, but no cracks so far, and the D-pad still feels secure in place. Miyoo does sell replacement parts from their official store, such as screens, buttons, rubber pads, so it can be fixed if needed. Although depending on the part that needs to be replaced, you can be better off just buying a new device and keeping the old one as a donor for part. That's just on my opinion. In terms of ergonomics, it is a small vertical device, so there is not much to be expected. But it is good enough for short play sessions, maybe up to 45 minutes. Without any attachments such as a case or a pop socket, my thumb and wrist starts hurting by being flexed after 1 hour. Also, I only find it easy to hold standing or seated. When laying in bed or reclined face up, the device starts to weigh down, so my solution for that is using a pop socket that I'll talk more in detail later in the video. Next, about the screen, I am really impressed by the quality of it. For the price of the device, I was not expecting much, but in terms of colors and resolution, it's very nice. In terms of brightness, it cannot be fully played under direct sunlight, but in the shade or just by having the screen not reflecting the sun directly, it is still playable. The software has options to adjust some parameters if needed, but I just left them by default. As I mentioned earlier, the only downside of the screen is that it's very fragile, since I have already these dead pixels, but it was mostly because of me of dropping the device. In the audio department, I'm always picky, but I'm no audiophile either, so it's been really tough for me the low quality sound, to the point that I use it mostly at low volume levels. The speaker distorts a lot, especially on PS1 games, so it sounds better for systems up to the 16-bit era. It can go really loud, but it has a lot of noise and lack of detail. Here are some examples. Using headphones, it improves a lot, and it does have a stereo output. I hear a bit of unbalanced volume being higher on the left channel than the right one, and the volume output with headphones is also lower, so on higher impedance headphones the volume might be too low for you. Regarding battery, the usual gameplay time on a single full charge ranges from 4 to 8 hours depending on the system being emulated, screen brightness, Wi-Fi, and how loud the speaker is set to. I have not done any thorough testing, but so far I have an average of 4 hours with Wi-Fi on, playing mostly outdoors, so brightness at an average of 6 to 7 out of 10, with Wi-Fi on and a mix of SNES, GBA, and PS1 games. I did a test with Wi-Fi off and playing Gameboy Advance game and got 7.5 hours from 85% to 2%. I tend to charge the Miyoo for about 1 hour when it hits 15%, and I'm using this 5 volts 2 amps brick and as well as Soundcore USB A to C cable. I also did a test where it lasted 80 minutes to go from 3 to 97%. Sometimes I do forget to disconnect it, but it seems that it stops charging since the LED is already off when I notice, but it is always recommended to not leave it unattended, although I have not heard of any hazards of the battery on this model, or any of the Miyoos actually. Before talking about performance and how I have each system set up, I do want to preface that the systems that I have more nostalgia for are PlayStation 1, NES, SNES, and Game Boy Advance. So I have been focusing on performance on those systems, but I do have a large ROM library of most of the supported consoles. Currently I'm running OnionOS 4.3.1-1. I started on the 4.2 beta a year ago, and I have not had any issues while playing the system supported, except with Nintendo DS, which is an added system thanks to the great effort of Stuart Fu, who ported it to the miyoomini, but I'll talk about it in detail once we reach that system. I did try the stock firmware that came preloaded, but OnionOS is so much better, so I just left it aside. For now, let's start with Game Boy. In terms of specific changes to the Onion setup, I have integer scale and keep aspect ratio on. The video filter, I use Game Boy Pocket Gray Grid, and in the overlay, the offset DMG Game Boy Pocket. For Game Boy colorization, I use internal with the essentials category, and in there Game Boy Pocket. All these settings I save them as a content directory override to keep them per system and don't change the default core ones either. Here is some gameplay footage with the audio coming from the speaker of the device. Moving to Game Boy Color, in core options, color correction, I'm using Game Boy Color only, and the mode inaccurate to desaturate the colors. For scaling, I have turned on integer scale and keep aspect ratio. For video filter, I'm using the Game Boy Color Dark Grid. And at last, in the overlay section, I'm using the offset Game Boy Color Black. Now let's see some examples of how that looks. For Game Boy Advance, I have for scaling integer scale off and keep aspect ratio on, so it blows the image to full screen. For video filter, I have none selected. And for the overlay, I'm using the GBA Real 3X logo with an opacity of 0.75. That is to give me the pixel grid, but still to not impact the overall brightness of the screen. Some GBA games may have some issues with the mGBA core. For example, Worms War Party, you can see that the frame rate does not reach 60 FPS. To fix it, I changed the core for that specific game by hovering to the name of the game and then pressing Y to go to the GLO menu and changing the game core to GPSP. Since that is a separate setting for that specific game, I will add the same video settings discussed before, but instead of saving it as a content directory override, I will save it as a game override. And now, here is how it looks. Now here is some gameplay of GBA games with the default mGBA core with the same appearance settings. For Pico 8, I run it through RetroArch and I have integer scaling off, keep aspect ratio on, and the Pico GR full grid overlay at 0.65 opacity. And here are some examples. Next, for all home consoles, I have the same CRT appearance, which is set up by having integer scaling and aspect ratio turned off, then applying the perfect CRT overlay. In specific for NES, I am torn between 4:3 aspect ratio and 8:7, since the latter gives me sharper pixels and some games look less stretched, but I could not find an overlay that I like with that aspect ratio. So for now, I am using 4:3 that looks like this. Games like Tiny Toon Adventures may need to have extra pixels removed by going into the core settings and turning on crop horizontal and on vertical overscan. I save it as a game options since it doesn't apply to all of the games, and now here is how it looks. Since I'm still considering 8:7 aspect ratio, the perfect CRT 240p overlay will work for it as well as for the 4:3 ratio, having this look, although not ideal since we are now missing the side border effects, and it further reduces the brightness as well. I'm changing the aspect ratio scaling combo by pressing menu plus start. For SNES, I only consider 4:3 aspect ratios, so it is the basic setup for home consoles I mentioned before, and here is some gameplay. Next, for PlayStation, same CRT settings, so here is how it looks. To be able to turn on Rumble in PlayStation, we need to change the control type in here to DualShock and then turn on vibration in game. Lastly, Nintendo DS games play well but with frame skip, so it looks choppy sometimes, and we need to factor as well that we only have one small screen, so it is best to play lightweight games that focus only on one screen at a time, which also have minimal to non-touch input. Apart from playability, the main issue with Nintendo DS games is that save states get more easily corrupted, so when it happens I have to force turn off the system by holding the power button for about 15 seconds, and then when turning it once again, holding the menu button at start, then going to the file manager and deleting the save state then of that specific game. So it is recommended to also use in-game saves, which are more stable, and actually that is an overall advice for the rest of the system. In-game saves are more stable than save states. For NDS, I changed the settings that JSON located in resources to modify the max CPU clock possible to 1700. And similarly, I changed the launch.sh in the root of NDS emu to have the launch CPU clock at 1700. The changes I tried to do them on device to avoid using a PC. For the miyoominiplus, the safe maximum clock speed should be 1900, while in the regular mini 1700, but it may vary in each device. In terms of appearance, I'm using the layout 0, and for the alternative, the number 3. That way I can switch between 0 and 1 with menu plus right and left, and alternate with menu plus A. I also set a grid overlay in the settings and pixel view by pressing menu plus B. So with that, this is how it looks. I did not mention overclocking for the rest of the systems, since I have not needed the extra performance so far. Fast forward for GBA is enough with the base clock, and for PS1 the resolution is enough as well as the fast forward in the games that I have played so far. I am beginning to test mobile Java games via adding the free Java 2 micro edition miyoomini emulator by a widget. Link in the description box below. For now, I changed the sound level to 10 in the launch.sh file of the Java folder inside Emu, otherwise every time that a game is launched, it will crank the volume to the max. So far, only 2D games seem to work properly. 3D games have a lower FPS count, as you can see in this example, and others show these weird artifacts. I did try increasing the clock speed to 1800, but it did not change the performance, so I just left the 1600 as default. There is also a glitch that not all the game's folders show within the emulator, but it is just a matter of going to the end of the list for them to appear. The resolution of the games that's best suited for the Miyoo is 320 by 240, since it is landscape orientation and 4:3 ratio. Here is some gameplay. To close a game, it can be either by pressing the menu button or selecting exit within the game. There is no save states option within the emulator, but it does keep the in-game saves properly, so you can just rely on those ones. Now for the inputs, you can see the mappings right now on the screen, but some games may require to change the input mode by pressing select plus start. For example, in Prince of Persia, The Forgotten Sands, instead of using the default B mode, it needs to be changed to E, otherwise you won't be able to start the game. The end mode will seem to work, but when you try to block by pressing Y, it does not register. However, now changing back to E, all controls properly work. Once you change it, the emulator will remember it and launch it by default in the next start. The input mode will show on the top left corner of the screen at the start of the game and also when it is being changed by pressing start plus select. There are some specific games that were only released in portrait resolution, but you can rotate the screen to play in tate mode by pressing start plus Y. The D-pad will change accordingly, but not the rest of the buttons. Also, the screen rotation resets after closing the game, so it needs to be changed in-game after starting it again. Here is a showcase of some of those games. There are also touchscreen Java games that run on the device, but it is a compromised experience by having to use a cursor, and the frame rate is also very low. Usually these games are found in a 640 by 360 resolution. To bring up the on-screen cursor, we press select plus X and register an input by pressing A, and this is how it performs. There is no FPS counter, but you can tell that it's not full speed, and using touch controls with a cursor is a pain. So I suggest to avoid the touchscreen version of the games and go for a different resolution. In this case, the 320 by 240 version is way better. Moving away from gameplay performance, let's proceed with the apps that I normally use. First, Activity Tracker, where I am around the 150 hours mark of gameplay, with the top games being Pokemon Ruby with 36 hours, Final Fantasy with 18 hours, and Crash Bandicoot with 14 hours, which I already completed. Other games that I have completed on the Miyoo are Super Mario Bros. 1 inside the Super Mario All-Stars collection, Crash Bandicoot 2, Crash Bandicoot Warped, and Deduce, but I'm working to get other endings. The following pages have other games that I have at least tried. The ones that I'm currently completing are Pokemon Ruby, Final Fantasy VII, Super Mario All-Stars, the complete collection, Prince of Persia, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and Alien Hominid. The next app is the battery monitor that we already saw, File Explorer mostly to edit config emu files or delete save states, Gameswitcher, I use it all the time but just via the menu button instead of here in the apps. Logo Tweak is where you set up preloaded boot screens. This is the one that I currently have, Nano Switch Dark, which matches the theme that we will see shortly as well. To set a new one is just a matter of selecting it and confirming, but it is advisable to not do it with low battery level to avoid any issues with flash in the internal memory. OnionOTA update for new software updates, but there have not been any in a couple of months, and Onion is very mature at the moment. Syncthing, as I mentioned in the storage section of the video, I'm using it to back up my saves, but I only use it with my PC, so I turn on the Wi-Fi in the Miyoo when I want to have it synced. Themes, I occasionally check the Onion website for newer theme releases and try them, but since I got those dead pixels, I only try dark themes now. And this is the one that I'm using right now, Nano Switch Dark. Within tweaks, these are the system settings that I have for startup, to auto-resume my last game, and to show the main menu when going to the main UI. For date and time, since this is not the RTC model, I have it to be set using Wi-Fi. Low battery warning at 5% since I don't like how the icon shows, and 5% gives me enough time to complete a game session. And for low battery, save and exit 3% just to avoid losing any progress. Vibration intensity set to low since it sounds more than it actually vibrates. Now for network setup, it is not showing any information since I have Wi-Fi off, but I often use the web-based file sync to transfer a few ROMs or themes when needed, either from my phone or tablet, basically when I'm not near a PC. Modem shortcuts and advanced have the default settings. With hidden appearance, I turn off recents since it is redundant having Gameswitcher. Same as expert mode that I'm not using. The volume brightness bar, I set it up with only 3 pixels. For themes override, I have battery percentage turned on with these settings to fit between the battery bar and the Wi-Fi icon. That actually I do not like how it usually looks in themes. Icons, I changed the arcade icon to this Super Game Boy theme one. All app icons are Super Game Boy theme ones as well, except by a couple that are material blue and none for Syncthing that is not available in the themes that I have. Last, for tools within tweaks, I use GameList for short name ROMs as well as the digest names to clean up naming across the board. And I have also sorted the app list by alphabetical order. I have not used the first two scripts since when I first set up the ROM library, I did that manually. The final app in the list that I have is Video Player. I tested with some anime, which plays well, but that was it. I don't actually use it. My last comment on my setup is that I do use favorites, but just to tag the games that I'm interested on. I do not go to the favorite section often, since I prefer to look for them per system. Now for the last few sections of this overview, let's move to talking about value. Considering that the miyoominiplus is currently at around $45 in AliExpress from the official Miyoo store with free shipping at least to Colombia, where I'm based, I believe it is a great value for either just having it to play right away with the stock software as a starter in the emulation world or as a complement to your other systems. In terms of availability and compared to a smaller Miyoo Mini, I have found it almost always available in 2024, at least in the AliExpress Miyoo official store. Sometimes I've seen some of the colors not available, but at least one of them should have stock. I have also seen being sold by other stores, vendors within AliExpress, but always check that it's a trusted one before making the purchase. It is also being sold through Amazon, Keep Retro, Go Game Geek, and Lit NXT, but right now I can only recommend Miyoo's official store, since that is the only one that I have used. The last section that I want to talk about is accessories. So the first one that I got were the screen protectors. I prefer the tempered glass ones for durability and visibility. They do not get as easily scratched or torn compared to the plastic ones. I have this one almost since I got the Miyoo a year ago, and it has only minimal scratches. The downside of the screen protectors are that they cannot cover the rounded edges of the screen, so it doesn't look that good. Hard cases, I have two. The first one has the same theme as the one that comes with the smaller Miyoo Mini, having the logo in red but now with the plus sign added to it. It also has the same red accents in the zipper. One thing to note is that the logo is on the right side, so similar how a manga is red. It also has a small loop to attach a strap, but I never used it. Inside it has this soft material to prevent scratches. On the left compartment is where the Miyoo will go. You can see that the face buttons are a bit carved into the soft textile and that I store the device face down and upside down, like this. It is because if I store stuff in the right compartment, like right now, I have a spare screen protector, the wipes to apply it, a small microfiber cloth, some earphones with an adapter for my phone, an SD card adapter with two micro SDs in a case, and a pop socket. So it becomes pretty tight and the thickest part of the Miyoo is at the bottom. Reason why I leave the bulkiest stuff opposite each other so now it can close. The next case that I have is all black, which I prefer. It doesn't have any logos nor the outside hoop, but in the inside the materials are a bit cheaper. However, it is a bit roomier, so it can fit now everything inside without playing Tetris with it. These two hard cases, I only use them when I travel, keeping the stuff inside as you just saw, and when I ride a motorcycle, I will store the Miyoo inside the case with only the headphones and a pop socket. For crash proof, but I hope it doesn't happen. When I go out within the city, I used to use this soft pouch, throwing in only the headphones and then the Miyoo with the pop socket, and throw everything inside a small backpack or inside my jacket. Now the pop socket, I started using it about 6 months ago and in overall increased the ergonomics significantly. Not only helps for longer play sessions, but also when using the Miyoo while laying upside up in bed or even just slouching in the couch. You can also switch which hand will carry the weight of the device, as well as using it as a kickstand. If you want to reduce the bulkiness, just remove the top disc. Now the downside of this is that the Miyoo's back no longer stays flush in the table as before, so instead of being like this, it points away from you, but since I use it now as a kickstand, it doesn't bother me that much. The last accessory that I bought is this silicone case. So first, before using it, I will need to remove the top part of the pop socket, so now I can slide the device in. Alright, now starting for the downsides, the material attracts easily lint, so when you store it in a pocket or in a bag, it will catch all that. But I have seen that it has become less apparent as the time passes. The next negative thing is that the rubber around the buttons, especially the face buttons, are very thick and does not thin out that far away, so you now feel that you need to press the button into the case. I already got used to it, but it's still so much better to play the device without it. And finally, just a nitpick of mine is that it is a bit loose around the screen, especially on the sides, which makes it look a bit curved. Despite that, I have been now using it almost all the time as general protection inside and outside of the house. Their perks are that it covers basically the entire device. Power and volume buttons are easy to press on. The rest of the buttons have cutouts, as well as the speaker, headphone jack, micro SD card slot, USB-C port, and the LEDs on the top. That actually covers that light bleed in this transparent model, as you can see. It also makes the device a bit chunkier and grippier, so it is easier to hold, and the looseness actually helps still having space for the pop socket base at the back. It has a place to thread in a strap like this, but I removed it after a couple of days for a more seamless appearance. So overall, I recommend getting it if you want extra protection, and there is also an off-white color, but it is usually sold out. I got the smaller ones for the miyoomini by mistake as well, so it is also available for that model, and it is basically the same. I have no trouble since I got the silicone case. It does fit in the hard cases, but just reduces a bit the available space for other stuff. Everything that I showcased here was bought through AliExpress, except for the soft pouch and the pop socket, which were from local stores. I'll leave links to all the accessories down in the description box below, if anyone is interested, at least for the ones that I still can find. Now finally, that was all that I wanted to showcase for the miyoominiplus as of September 2024. There are other devices competing with the miyoominiplus in terms of form factor and price, such as the Ambernic XX line, some of the Paukiri devices, and now maybe a trimuibrick that is yet to be released. But the Miyoo is easy to use and very cheap, so give it a chance. The knowledge on the Miyoo Mini that I've gotten and applied on my setup has been from Miyoo's subreddit, different videos from Retro Game Corps, and the Onion GitHub page. So I leave links to that in the description box below. If you have any questions, please let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.